Hello, and welcome to the Herbal Mana Podcast. I am your host, Todd Bailey, and we like to talk about all things pain, in particular, things that help us to hurt less and live more. And I get the opportunity to talk to natural health folks in all sorts of fields. And today, you're in for a real treat. Quite a bit different, and yet something I've experienced throughout my adult life as I've worked with mentors and coaches. Today's guest is Teri Leigh. Teri has a really cool background. We're not just talking about somebody who puts on creams or salves. That's kind of our job because we do topical creams and gels and things for pain. And she is able to work much deeper, the energy side of much of what goes on in our lives, not just from the pain side, but some really interesting things. In fact, one of the things, Teri, I found really interesting is that you spend a good deal of time on words, the meaning of words, the impact of words and how they impact our emotions and impact how we feel and think and experience life. In fact, I kind of like to start there before we go into background and such, because you got an awesome background story. I want to start first with words, because I am always fascinated with words. I'm not a great wordsmith unless we're doing technical writing, then I can grind it out. But there's so much more to words. You talk about the power of words, the sound, the meaning, the feeling. How did you come up with that? How did you discover? Because it's meaningful.
I think I've always just been a word nerd. Like when I was a little kid, when I first learned how to read, I was fascinated by words and how writers put words together. But it's more so than that, because when you read a story, you get an emotion, you get a feeling, and it plucks at your heartstrings and it plucks at your chords. And I wanted to understand that more on a scientific level as I got older. Because yes, I was one of those word nerds who I didn't go to play on the playground. I hid in the bush with my book because I liked reading stories and what stories had to do. They took me to a different world, but they also took me to a different sensation inside myself, and poetry and language and even lyrics of music. And how does that impact us from the inside out? And so I studied words. I got a bachelor's degree in creative writing. I got a bachelor's degree in literature, and then linked that with teaching, and then linked that with yoga to really understand, like, how do words pluck us from the inside out? And when we hear words, it's a vibration, and that vibration plucks at our nervous system. It literally changes how we feel things because it vibrates within our whole body. And that vibration inside our bodies, by the sounds of letters, by the tone of voice, by the energy behind what someone's saying, it means so much more. Plus, to go a little bit more into my background, I didn't learn this until in the last 5 years or so about myself. I have a condition called hyperacusis, and hyperacusis is hypersensitive hearing. And so I didn't know that I was not normal. I just knew that I heard things, and I thought tinnitus was something a lot of people have, but mine goes a little bit further than that, where I can hear really what people are saying by the sounds and the letters that they're using, and the choices of the words that they repeat, and the way they say those words, and the way they emphasize the letters and the sounds within those words. And then I took it a step further when I was teaching yoga, and I really studied it. Like, how did my words change the actions and the physical behaviors of my students? And how did it change how they were expressing themselves in their bodies by the different ways that I use words and language? So I've studied words, language, and sound in every way possible that is not by a book.
When I first ran across the material about words, it reminded me of the 4 agreements.
Be impeccable with your word.
So it talks about the magic, the power behind words and the little seeds that we can plant, especially to an open, young, maybe vulnerable mind, actually any mind, any age. But he was talking in particular about kids and how we can say something that plants a seed that will, with time, bear fruit for good or ill.
Very much so. And not just with children, but with anyone. I mean, we've all experienced it in motivational speakers. You go listen to a motivational speaker and all they're doing is talking. But as they talk, they inspire, they motivate, and you walk away feeling like you can conquer the world or do something new. And many people do. They take what a speaker says and they run with it because it's plucked the nervous system. It's changed and channeled how your nerves are talking to your hormones and how your hormones are evoking your emotions. And when your emotions are changed, that's what causes the impetus to do something different in your behaviors and your experience of life. And a lot of that comes down to simple, which letters are you choosing to use? Are you choosing a harsh K that has a sharp impact? Or are you choosing a bouncy B that has a playful, buoyant impact? Are you choosing a slippery S or a penetrating T? The letters you choose really matter in how people receive you.
Do I have to be an expert? Do I need to be a linguistics expert to figure this out?
Yes and no. I mean, I've been a linguistics expert, not in the sense that I went to a college and got a master's degree in linguistics, but I have studied for years all these different sounds and how they impact. However, it's intuitive. It's intrinsic in who we are and how we work. And the way we speak to other people, when we're angry, we tend to use sharper tones like T's and K's. And when we're happy, we tend to use bouncier sounds like P's and B's. But knowing these things can amplify the power of it, and then choosing to do that consciously and intentionally rather than the unconsciously and intuitively really amplifies the power of how it works. And that's why affirmations work. If you choose an affirmation that has the sounds in it that you want to evoke, the sensations in your body, and you manifest that affirmation much more mindfully, it's going to have more impact than if you just choose a random phrase that someone told you to use.
Affirmations. You just had half my audience kind of start to go to sleep. The guys in the crowd, but I can tell you guys, men, or even women who are not quite as open, it's real. It works. The words make a difference. Posture makes a difference. Tone makes a difference. So how do you coach somebody to understand that? Now, I've gone through it with a mentor. Otherwise, I would be as clueless as, well, a lot of people I know. How do we get somebody to be open to that? Because it's meaningful, especially for my crowd. We're kind of the chronic pain crowd. And I see a really close relationship between the words, the openness, the mindfulness, and how we perceive the pain.
Let's play with that word right there, pain. When you said it, you emphasized the A. And that A sounds like someone's writhing in pain. So when you use that word, it amplifies that sensation in your body. And when it amplifies that sensation in your body's going to recoil and go into postures that represent the pain. So why not use a different word that may have a similar meaning, but a different sensation within your body? And I'd have to get deeper into the psychology of a person to get them using language. And that's where it has to be very personalized, because if I were to give you a word that doesn't mean anything to you, except it's just a word that you've read in the dictionary, it's not going to have the same impact as a word that you've heard in your life and in your past that you tend to use in a certain way. And so I would ask you, say, when you talk about pain, what are some of the words around pain that you use that we might want to look at? And as I listen to you, then I can hear which words have a different energy, but a similar meaning that we can then flip into an affirmation that has a different impact on the body.
I start with a somewhat blank slate when I have something that's chronic, and I've got quite a few chronic issues. I've been through a couple dozen surgeries, 20 orthopedic surgeries, broken bones, a few things. And if I have something that's chronic and I'm struggling, I always start with just calling it a thing. I'm very particular. That is a thing. That pain in that joint is a thing. So I start with a blank slate. And then I start coming up with words to work with. But if I don't start with a blank slate, I get the pain and I get kind of, and I can't be stuck. I really can't make progress. And I can't separate some of that pain from what I'm really experiencing in life. I don't want to be suffering. I don't mind that I'm experiencing some discomfort, some pain, but I don't want to be wallowing in it. And I sure don't want it to rise to a level of genuine suffering, no matter the level of pain. And I think I can choose if I can start with a blank slate and then carefully craft how I think about that particular pain, how I describe that particular pain. And I try to separate it somewhat from the core that is me, even though it's still part of my body. I've got to create some separation. And then I go to the gym and I work on the thing. And a little crude, a little rough, but that's how I start.
And as you spoke, I was listening to the sounds that you were using, and particularly the sounds. This is my hyperacusis. My sense of hearing will pick out the sounds that you use over and over again, and the ones that you emphasize. And the sounds that you emphasize were the NG sounds. Ding, ding. When you got to the NG sound or the ING, that's where you tended to linger with your vocal tone. And so the ing sound is a lingering, it's an elongation. And it's almost like when you're taking the pain, you lengthen it out so it doesn't have such an acuteness to it, but it has something that you can journey through like you would in a lingering. You also used it when you used the word suffering a couple of times, and when you use the word wallowing. It's that elongation and that lengthening of it. And that's part of pain is a process. It's not something you can just halt and stop. You have to experience the process of it, live with it, process it, move through it. And the ING sound is something that works for you particularly, Todd.
Now, for me, I've got physical pain, and then sometimes I have the pain of change. And I noticed from some of your materials that you help folks through change, through transition.
Yes.
What in particular do you like to help folks with? Where do you shine?
The biggest shift that has to happen when people are dealing with change and transition is the shift of the mind where they're thinking, I want to be done with this. I want it to stop. I want it to be over. I want to fix this problem. And when they shift that mindset out of fixing or stopping or halting something into, this is a process to move through, and this is a journey or an experience to have, then everything changes in terms of how you experience that experience, rather than looking at it as something that is terrible or horrible or bad. You look at it as something that is process, a journey, a growth experience, a opportunity, a possibility, a potential. And then when you can experience that as like the NG, the lengthening of something you're meandering through, it has a whole new purpose rather than, I just don't like this, I need it to stop. So I help people with that shift, and I help hold them even through the times of discomfort. When things are uncomfortable, we want it to stop. And if you can learn how to be comfortable in the discomfort, that's where growth happens.
Do you work directly with people? Coaching directly, mentoring directly?
Most of my work is one-on-one private coaching. I
Okay.
do some small groups, but mostly it's one-on-one.
And how do folks connect with you for that in particular?
There are two places. You can find me on my website, terileigh.com, and you'll find all kinds of stuff there about how to work with me privately. I also write for Substack. Are you familiar with Substack, Todd?
Vaguely, but it keeps popping up in my world.
It keeps popping up because it's getting a little bit more popular. Substack is it started in 2017. It's a newer social media platform that is not known as social media because it's completely ad-free. And it's mostly writers writing about whatever it is they're passionate about. And it has a social media wall, just like Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn or Twitter. But it also has a place where people write their blogs and a place where people send out newsletters. And so I write for Substack. And so that's where you can get access to all kinds of articles about all the many different things that I teach and that I share and that I work with clients. So if you're not wanting to work with me one-on-one and you're wanting to learn, Substack is a great place to go. Just plug in my name, Teri Leigh, on Substack, and you'll see all the things I publish there.
All right. So Substack, you got a great website.
Thank you.
I see you on social media, and you also pop up on Amazon.
I do. I have 7 books on Amazon.
By the way, that's awesome to be able to complete a book there. Well, I'm only through one book so far I'm working on, and it's awesome.
Thank you.
Organized, very accessible. I've got to go back and do a couple more. You've got 6?
I've got 7.
7.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which one are you reading through now?
It's one on Mozi.
Mozi. That's the shortest one. And that's the easiest read and the quickest way to get through a lot of what I teach. It's linking affirmations to body posture actions. and amplifying your intentions through body action and affirmation.
That would all be woo-woo stuff to me, except that a decade or so ago, I had to work with a mentor because I was stuck financially, mentally, emotionally. I was in a bad place. And I worked with a really good mentor, really good coach. And among other things, he had me working on some affirmations that he would coach me through building so I would know how to wordsmith it properly. I would have to move. I had to use music, and he incorporated a whole bunch of modalities so that I could become less stuck.
Yes.
So can you guide us through that, all the different parts, and then maybe conclude with mindfulness versus meditation?
So the MOSI Method is a simple way of what you were just describing that your mentor took you through, where you put your body into a specific action, say how you stand on your feet, and you plant your feet on the ground, and that action of planting your feet, applying that to a mental intention or an affirmation, just 3 words, I am safe, and planting your feet and even like grounding both feet, foot, stomping your feet into the ground as you say, I am safe, and take a deep breath. The physical action involves your muscles and your bones. The mental action, the mental thought involves your nerves, and the breath involves your respiratory and your circulation system, and you're integrating the whole body into that mindset and body set shift. So if you're not feeling safe in a certain circumstance, if you're not feeling stable and you ground your feet, say, I am safe, and take a breath with that, it takes 10 seconds. But if you do that 10 seconds 20 times a day, you're going to shift how your body feels on an overall basis in everything in your life. And you're going to start to feel more safe and stable.
So set aside a day to sit on the mountaintop and chant.
You don't need a day to sit on a mountaintop and chant. You need 10 seconds, 50 times a day, or 5 times a day. The more often you do it, the more it becomes part of your nervous system, the more it becomes part of your norm. And that's when it becomes an actual shift in your whole body. If you do it once a day, you'll feel good that one time a day. If you do it 10 times a day, it'll start to pervade everything you do. And then it'll start to become your natural, normal way of standing. And I have MOSI Method exercises for every body part, for every emotional issue, for every kind of thought and action and challenge and pain that someone is going through.
On the pain side, something that's interesting with chronic pain, our system kind of gets tired, fatigued. Our nervous system just gets kind of frazzled. And we do need a way to re-ground ourselves. And it's not going to be through popping pills or getting the next prescription, because that just never plays out, never works out. There's just no good long end game for that. As far as the affirmations and the grounding, that's completely different. What's interesting is the research that I've seen of late for something as simple as power pose. Strike a power pose and your willpower is increased. Strike a power pose and you can measurably increase your ability to focus. And that's only part of the picture. But even that part is revelatory to some of us who are not quite as open or familiar with the energy side of our being, more stuck in our physical side.
What you're speaking of, the power pose, originated, I believe, with Amy Cuddy in like 2013-ish. She was a professor at Harvard Business School, and she studied all these power poses and how people would, it was basically body posture and body language and how people receive other people based on how their body language is. But that also has an internal shift within yourself. And if you learn not just a specific body posture power pose, but if you really learn the proper posture of how to use your muscles the way they were designed to be used, which most of us human beings are not doing. As we learn to use our body structure the way it's meant to be structured and the way the muscles are supposed to be designed, you can eliminate a huge amount of chronic pain because you're using the muscles to do their proper jobs. And when that happens, then things get easier in your life. And then when you link that to the mental intention and the thoughts and the actions going through your nervous system, connecting to what the body is physically doing in the muscles and the bones, everything starts to align even better. And that's when chronic things start to just sort of melt away, because A, you're using your body properly, B, you're giving your body positive messages, and C, the two link together. And then you add the element of breath, which is a breath of fresh air, which is oxygen, that makes everything better. It's a magic triad: body, breath, mind.
I think that's important because some of the pain we perceive is from actual stimulus, current actual stimulus. Some is a phantom hangover of pain. And some of what we perceive in chronic pain is from that built up phantom pain. And it never quite resolves. We're hanging on to it. Somehow our body stores that sensation, stores that stress that comes with the pain, and we hang on to it. Unless we find a way to offload, deal with it, instead of continuing to pack it with us.
Right. And a lot of that is the mind-body connection. If we're stuck in the trauma of it and replaying the trauma in our mind and keep using words and language that link to that trauma, that's the message we're sending to our body. And our body's responding by saying, okay, I'll keep holding on to this because you keep talking about it in your head. So if you shift those messages that you're giving yourself in your mind and you shift how your body's holding things, the two can start to correlate and talk to each other better. Rather than playing the same feedback loop of pain, they start to change into a new feedback loop of this is a new way of being.
So how did you develop the MOSI Method? Actually, how did you name it too? Because that's a key story.
I developed it over years of studying yoga bodies and yoga postures and linking that to my real curious word nerdiness and how does body action and words and language all work together. How did I come up with the name? I went to a dog park and I asked a tree because I'd spent so many, probably like 5 years trying to come up with a name in my own head. And finally I said, I don't know what this is. I went to a dog park and I sat down and I said, I'm not leaving till I know the answer. And a dog bounded up to me and planted a little kiss on my cheek. And I don't want to say it was a small dog. This was a Great Dane.
Boy.
He really had an attitude, and his name was Mozi. And he definitely was about expressing his best, happiest self. And that's what really I think the MOSI Method is about, is using your body and your mind the way you really want to use it to express yourself in full jubilation to the world.
I like that. All right. Mindfulness versus meditation.
Meditation, traditionally, if you ask the monks and the yogic teachers who study all things spirituality like that, they believe that meditation is not something you can do, but it's an energy that happens to you sort of spontaneously. Meditation is that greater awareness that happens when you have these magical moments. Yet there are practices you can do called concentration, and we call it in the Western world meditation, where you sit and you quiet your mind and you focus on your breath and you pay attention to the world without reacting to things and so forth. But meditation usually does require a consistent practice of 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes at a time. And that just simply isn't accessible to the average person. In American culture, in Western world, in scrolling social media, we are 3-second people. We are not 30-minute people. And to tell someone who lives in a 3-second world, a 3-second attention span, to sit down and focus for 30 minutes is often just impossible. And so that's part of why I developed the MOSI Method, because I believed there should be a way to access these deeper wisdoms inside ourselves without having to sit quietly for 30 minutes or bend yourself into pretzel positions and stupid human tricks in yoga for an hour and a half. And so I linked it all together and I said, what's the shortcut? And the shortcut is the MOSI Method. And the MOSI Method is basically very simple, 3 to 10 to 30 second mind-body exercises that are being mindful for this moment. If you're mindful for this 3 seconds, you can add on another 3 seconds, add on another 3 seconds. And if you do that 3 10-second exercise several times a day, it starts to pervade your every single day. And that's really how the brain works. The brain doesn't work in these big chunks of time. The brain works in little increments over time in a long span of repetition. When we repeat something, it becomes our norm. So rather than sitting for a chunk of 30 minutes and saying, oh, I'm done, meditation, and hoping that will spill out into your everyday life, why not meditate in mindfulness of 10-second chunks several times a day.
I can do that.
And the best way to do that is to attach the mindfulness to something you already do. Attach it to a habit. You go to the bathroom 5 times a day, 10 times a day, depending on how much water you drink. Every time you go to the bathroom, do a mindfulness exercise. That will pervade your life. So if there's one takeaway I can give everyone listening to this podcast, every time you go to the bathroom, while you're peeing, while you're pooping, while you're washing your hands, breathe deep. That's it.
Right, breathe deep.
Breathe deeper than normal for that time. Every time you're in the bathroom, you walk into the bathroom, start breathing deeper. You walk out of the bathroom, you can stop breathing deeper. See how that impacts your life. It will change everything.
Just breathing. I don't have to hold the thought. I don't have to say a chant. I don't have to do
one thing at a time. Breathe deep. After you've been doing that for a while, add an affirmation. See what that does. After you've been doing that for a while, add a posture. See what that does. If
I had gone through what I did with my mentor, I'm not sure I would have understood how quickly and how impactfully, some of these little things are. Just how impactful.
Yeah.
I thought it had to be a big, long, drawn-out process before I would see any results. And really, it was just unloading all of my garbage and giving it a minute or 2 minutes. And then I could start to see results as soon as I could unpack all of my baggage, which was the harder part.
Yes.
And then I started to make progress.
And you've got to do it. It does take a long time because you have to do it many, 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 many times over time.
What is that?
You don't have to do it in long sitting duration.
Is there a physical change, emotional change, nervous system change when I do it over time? What's changing about me? What's improving? What's different?
Everything is changing. But let's go back to just the breathing. If you breathe deeper every time you go to the bathroom. Todd, how many times a day do you go to the bathroom? 6 times a day. So 6 times a day, and you're in the bathroom for minimum of a minute, maybe 2 minutes. Other times it could be 5 or 10 minutes. What if you add that deep breathing to the whole time you're in the shower? You add up those times over time. So you're probably getting 20 to 30 minutes a day of deep breathing if you count your showers and the times you're washing your hands and other things you do in the bathroom. For 20 to 30 minutes a day, you're deep breathing. You're getting more full, rich oxygen into your system. That full, rich oxygen will go into your system and do many things. It calms you down. It softens and soothes the nervous system. So you walk away from the bathroom with a calmer nervous system, and that's going to last for a while after you leave the bathroom. And then you go back to the bathroom and you start it again. So you're resetting your nervous system every single time you go to the bathroom to get that calmer state. So you're bringing yourself to a calm state more times in a day than you weren't doing at all. That's just on the nervous system level. And so that's a mental and emotional level. When your nervous system is shifted like that, your nervous system tells your hormones what to do. And your hormones govern how you feel emotionally. And they also govern how your body functions physically, like your digestive system. If you're getting more oxygen into your system and calming yourself down several times a day, you're also going to shift your moods and your emotions into a quieter state. And that's going to tell your digestive system to relax and to do its job a little bit more calmly. It'll soften your IBS. It'll soften your tummy aches. It'll soften your ulcers. And oxygen also has a healing property. Oxygen goes in and cleans out all the crap in your system. So if you're doing that while you're going into the bathroom every day, you're giving yourself that physical digestive reset that also then will impact your sleep-wake cycle because that nervous system response and the hormones are going to shift. So those are things that are happening on the physical, and then that all pervades into the mental, emotional, and spiritual and psychological and everything just by breathing.
I do know a lot of digestive issues you mentioned are stress related. And if we can't control the stress, if we can't get grounded, then those issues become more acute.
Yeah.
And it's all too common these days. Not just digestive pain and discomfort in all shapes, sizes, and varieties.
What happens is your digestive system does not like to work when you're stressed. When it's like they're the little creatures in your belly that are supposed to do the digesting for you. When they see stress, they're like, I'm going to go hide under the bed. They quit working. They do not want to function when they're stressed. So if you're stressed, your digestive system shuts off. And if you have stuff in there that needs to be done and it's shut off, it's going to cause issues because that food and that stuff is going to add up and it's going to turn into festering something. So you've got to balance that stress and digest cycle. And most people's overweight issue is really an overstress issue because the digestive system is just shutting off because there's too much stress going on in life.
I've heard the digestive system referred to as the second brain because of the close connections with, for instance, the feel-good hormones. If my gut is in knots, I'm not going to produce the serotonin that I need. And the bulk of my serotonin is in my digestive system, although we think it's in the brain. And the pills that we're given to pop, they're for treating what's in the brain. Well, that's about 10% of the whole. Most of it in the digestive tract. And the stress directly impacts that. So it's awesome that with being more grounded, the affirmations, the MOSI method, everything can work better. And if
everything works.
If that system's working better, I'll have less pain everywhere. So I'll have less inflammation. I'll have less issues, less problems. Right. I want to veer into something a little different and yet connected. You talk about chakras. Again, half my audience just went to sleep, but it's awesome to learn about, important to understand, and an integral part of our system, how our body functions. Can you just give us a quick explanation of what chakras are, where they are in your body, how you divide them up into categories, because I know they're numerous and yet they're kind of categorized, and why does it matter?
The chakras are basically bundles of nerves. So your body is made up of your brain, your nervous system is your brain and your spinal cord, and branching off from the spinal cord are all these nerves that go out to all the different body parts. And that's the way your body communicates from your brain to your body and your body to your brain. Every time a nerve, that's like a wiring in your system, crosses another nerve, so there's an intersection, that's a chakra. So you have 72 million chakras in your system. It's just a wiring. When you go to a acupuncturist and they put the needles in, they're putting them into chakras to redirect the wiring going through your system. And so the 7 major chakras, like you said, categories, are the ones that live along the spine, starting at the base of your spine and working your way up to the crown of your head. And each of those intersections have big bundles of a whole bunch of wiring that happens. Think of it like a traffic circle where there's cars. Cars are like messages from your brain to your body going into the chakra and then getting redirected to a different part of the body within that traffic circle. But in a traffic circle in the auto industry, it's a 2-dimensional circle connected to the ground, whereas in a chakra, it's a 3-dimensional globe where there's all these wires coming in and all these messages coming in, and then they move around to get to different parts of the body. So really, your chakra system is your nervous system. And that communication from your brain to your body and to other parts of your body that extend beyond the spinal cord and the central nervous system. That's where the woo-woo gets out of it. Like, if you think of it as just this energy center, it gets all woo. But if you think of it as like, this is really where the communication centers happen. And each body part has a different aspect of your body as well as your life that the chakra or the energy center governs. So for example, one of the most popular chakras that people talk about is the heart chakra. And the heart chakra lives right in the heart. And what's connected from the heart is your arms and your shoulders. But what is inside there that the organs and the tissues that are functioning inside the heart chakra are getting communicated to within those nerves and that wiring, but the heart and the lungs. What do the heart and lungs do all day long? They take in and they let go. They take in and they let go. It's about giving and receiving. So when you take in, you're receiving. When you breathe in, when your heart pulls in blood, and then when it pumps out, it's giving. And your lungs breathe out, it's giving out. From a physical perspective, your body constantly needs that balance of taking something in and letting it go, and receiving or giving and receiving. But in a spiritual, emotional, mental, psychological experience of life and relationships, everything in life is a balance of giving and receiving as well. And moving because the sun's getting in my eyes.
I like the analogy you have where It's the energy flow, all the connections, all the wiring for guys in particular. It's a little easier to understand as an electrical system rather than an abstract energy system.
Yeah.
And once you hear about it as all of the electrical connections, all that connectivity, then it starts to make sense. How do I know if something's out of whack as far as the chakras? If I have some sort of, some degree of stuckness, for lack of a better word, what do I do? How do I know?
It's just like a traffic circle. There's either too much going on or there's not enough going on. Just like an electrical wiring system, there might be a short circuit, and it will manifest in physical ways. So the heart chakra, if there's something going on, it will manifest in things like heart disease, or it will manifest in things like asthma, or it could manifest in things like that are more emotional, like challenges with your relationships and your imbalance in how you give and receive in relationships with other people. It's all symbolic. If you look at the electrical wiring as symbolic of what's going on in your life as a whole. And so if you're feeling stuck about a relationship, it's probably a heart chakra issue, and it's probably an issue in terms of how you give and receive in reciprocation within relationship. And how do you give and receive within your own body as well? Now, how to get even deeper with that, you asked a big question that you probably need a professional, and that's when you call me and I can read your chakras and tell you what's going on and give you some prescriptions to help address that.
By the way, talk about that a little bit, because it's in your materials and it's awesome. The fact that you can read chakras. It's a little unusual. Now, I do know 2 people personally that can see auras, but I've never asked them about chakras. The aura part seems a little bit less useful.
Yes.
The chakras seem a little bit more useful because I can focus on something to work on. And maybe that's just me wanting a to-do list.
Let me go back to that electrical wiring analogy. If the chakras are the intersections of the electrical wires, those intersections are like light bulbs. They're like the little light bulbs that light up on a string of lights. And the aura itself is the light that emanates from your body. And the aura is constantly changing based on so many different factors that you really can't keep it constant or change it. Just in this conversation, your aura, I can see auras as well. Your aura has changed 100 zillion times, but your chakras stay pretty steady based on your life conditioning, your genetics, the way you hold your body, the way you live, your choices in life. And they adjust to the circumstances of what's going on. And so when I read someone's chakras, I do have the ability to see, and I do have that hyperacusis where I can hear the different tones going on in your chakras by the words and the emphasis on sounds that you choose. And I can also then make not assumptions, but make inferences about what's going on in your chakras by the stories you tell me and the things going on in your life. And so when someone comes to me wanting a chakra reading, I'm not a psychic. I do not claim to just sit here and tell you what I see. I need you to talk to me about what's going on in your life. And as you talk, I watch the energies shift within your electrical wiring. I listen to the words you're choosing. I listen to the stories you're telling, and I can make inferences and assessments on what's going on in your chakras based on the things you talk about. Then I give that back to you in an explanation of this is what's going on with each individual chakra, give you a little education about what chakras are doing what things. And that's when we can go into a conversation about what you can do and prescriptions to help you balance those.
That's actually the key thought as I was getting ready for this, that I want my audience to understand. There is help. We don't have to be forever stuck in a cycle of what may seem like suffering. Often in chronic pain, we feel like we have suffering, but it's not just from the injury, the surgery, the broken bone. It's often from being stuck in a cycle, perpetual loop, and we do need help. And it's nice to have somebody that we can turn to come up with a plan and to figure this out. And it's a little difficult to do without some real input from the outside. The ability to see the chakras, very important. The ability to dissect the words, I think, is critical, because I do think words explain a lot about what's going on inside, not just the stories, but how we express the stories. And I like in your material and some of the videos I've watched how you can draw that out to help somebody break from that cycle. And I think that's really important for somebody who's got a chronic condition. Some of our chronic conditions are chronic. So they're going to hang around. I've had 13 surgeries, knee replacements, experimental things,
Right.
not going away. But how I work with it, how I perceive it, how I mentally and emotionally manage it makes all the difference in the world for me.
Exactly. And it's an internal process. Like, I'm not going to fix you. If you come to me as your mentor, as your guide, I'm going to help you figure out what you can do for yourself. I'm not going to give you a quick fix and a magic pill. I'm not going to give you an external cream or salve or prescription to take. I'm going to give you things to digest and practices to do and ways to process through. Like we talked about in the beginning, it's about elongating the pain and finding ways to manage it until it eventually dissipates rather than make it stop right now. Yes, a pill can shut off your nervous system and make you not feel the pain for this duration of time that the pill is in your system, but the source of it is still there. So let's get to the source of it. Let's get to what it is that's causing the pain from how you're using your body, how you're using your mind, how you're behaving in your life, and maybe what the pain has to teach you about how you can grow and how you can evolve in your soul as a person.
So I know I can't pop a pill that has a diminishing return. I can put on creams and salves. We have some awesome stuff and we get great reviews, a lot of help, but there's something about some of the conditions that just stick. They just stay. And I think this is an approach that can help. In the medical field, we can look at neuroplasticity. And for those of my folks watching the podcast, you can go dig into that. And it's kind of similar what's going on, except there's not a methodology for dealing with the neuroplasticity, which is really that phantom pain that's hanging on for some reason, whether it's emotional or energetic, whatever it is. So I really like this. I really like that there's a method, an approach. I love that it's got a cool name, but I like that there's a doable, followable method, which is huge.
Yes, the MOSI method is a very simple and practical, doable, followable methodology to retrain the neuroplasticity, not just in your brain, but from your brain through your whole body. And not just on a physical nervous system perspective, but on the muscular, the structural, the orthopedic, the emotional, the hormonal, the spiritual, the psychological, all integrated. You can't separate your thoughts from your feelings, from your emotions, from your body, from your tissues. They're all integrated. So work on a holistic level.
I like that. All right. So for connecting with you, I can find your website.
Yes. You can find me on my website, terileigh.com.
Does anybody need to go to LinkedIn for any reason? You got a presence there.
I do have presence. I'm not active on any of the normal socials. If you want to see me live, like posting regularly, go to Substack.
Okay. I also know that you've been on quite a few podcasts. I was able to dig through quite a few of those, getting ready for this over the last 4 or 5 days that I've had.
Yes.
Which have been awesome. All great interviews.
Thank you.
It's great to have a way to plug in, but the website is awesome. So for those of you who really want to dig into this, dig into that phantom lingering pain and really get some relief, that's the right place to go. So you can start getting connected to Teri. I think you've got
would love that.
Really awesome stuff to offer. And I think that it's underutilized, certainly not discussed enough. This side of pain, suffering, just wellness, all around wellness.
The holistic approach that you really need to dig into all of it, not just why does this physically hurt?
All right. Well, with that, let's wrap up. This has been awesome.
Thank you, Todd.
About another hour or two. This is awesome. Some great materials. Look again for all of you folks. I'll put this in the show notes. You can find 7 books on Amazon. Very accessible and oddly affordable.
Thank you.
Several. Anyway, that's awesome. I appreciate having you on the show. This is great.
I appreciate your invitation. It's nice to know you.